All right, Merl Stroder. Merl, do you give us a quick introduction to yourself? We're very, very appreciative of you being here, by the way.
Thanks for the invite, Hayes. My name is Merl Stroder. I'm a small business specialist with the National Acquisition Center at the Department of Veterans Affairs. I've been in federal contracting as first as a military officer for quite a while, since about 1990. And then after I retired, I stayed on with the Air Force as a procurement analyst and small business specialist. I've been with the VA now for about 10 years at the National Acquisition Center exclusively, doing their small business program. And I have a lot of experience with, just procurement in general. And being a hillbilly from the Ozarks of Missouri, I guess I got to say, go Cards.
Go Cards. All right, we'll take that. I'll take that, but I do appreciate it for you doing here. All right, next is Don Prisby. Don, kind of give us a quick 60 seconds and a team or college you pull for.
You bet. Hey, Hayes, thanks for having us, and it's good to see everybody. I'm going to give a shout out to all our folks from the East Coast. I go with the Boston Red Sox as one of my favorite teams. That goes way back to my childhood. I'm Don Prisby. I'm the founder of North Point Advocates, and I'm located in Minneapolis, St. Paul. I've been in private healthcare since 2007 in a marketing function, and then working with the VA specifically and the Defense Health Administration since 2016. But I really appreciate the economics of healthcare, how razor thin the margins are, what the urgencies are for delivering value, improving veteran well-being while driving down the cost of care. So our firm is dedicated to helping companies like you all who want to approach the federal government, but are looking for business development strategies to do so. So it's all about, you'll hear a lot of acronyms today and a lot of perceived confusion in terms of how you do it, but we're going to demystify that process and make it easy for you. Dennis, it's good to see you, and Merle and Andrew, great to be here with you. Also, hi, Carl.
Well, I appreciate you doing it. And again, there's a lot of things here today. I'm going to ask questions I just don't know the answer to. I'll be the first one to admit it. So I'll ask some dumb questions and y'all just laugh at me. But there are, it's a different animal, isn't it? Also, by the way, I see David Park said he's from Clemson, South Carolina, and Lexington. You cannot be both. That does not make sense. Even though his son plays for Clemson. So I'm actually disallowing you. Drew Daar, welcome. Give us a quick overview, please.
Hey, I'm Drew. I live right outside of DC. I was with Steris for the first 10 years of my career, and then 6 years ago came over to MSI and helping out with the GPO world and also the VA and DoD side as well. So living in DC makes it really easy to go visit the SAC and some of the favorite places around the area. So, well, thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks, Drew, for doing that. And certainly not last, Carl, welcome, and give us a quick little overview, please.
Yeah, sure. My name is Carl Workman. I am a founding partner of Critical Thinking Group, which is a consulting firm. I'm a retired government contracting officer, 32 years of federal service in the contracting field. My last assignment was at the VA Strategic Acquisition Center in Fredericksburg, Virginia, where I managed the team that handled prosthetics and surgical implants for the national contracts. My favorite team, I am a Detroit Tigers fan, so I know exactly how to suffer, and have been now been out of the playoffs for almost 10 years. But that's me, and I'm very excited to be here and talk contracting.
Thanks, Carl. And also, if you're a Tigers fan, you're also a Lions fan, I guess, and they've had their troubles too. So
don't start.
We feel your pain. All right, I'm going to share the poll results here with everybody, so you should be seeing them now. I hope you are, and you can see it's split. So this will hopefully help our team here understand a little bit about what we have and where we are. So we're going to get my first question. I'll just throw it out again. I'm looking at my screen. Y'all should be seeing some spotlighted folks here, but let's go with Carl first. What is the difference between the GSA, VA, and the federal supply schedule. Can you give us a little bit about that?
So GSA is really the lead agency for federal supply schedules. They maintain kind of that the federal supply schedule kind of being a catalog approach for the government, where companies can list various products and services that they have available for agencies to bid on. However, the VA has a special responsibility with regard to medical federal supply schedules. So the VA, specifically the National Acquisition Center out of Hines, Illinois, manages the federal supply schedule for the various commodity areas that the VA tends to purchase the most in. So that's the biggest difference. They're both. When we use the term schedule, we kind of use it interchangeably with the ones that that GSA does and the one that VA does, but the areas of responsibility are actually quite specific.
Excellent, excellent. Anybody want to add anything to that, Dennis?
Yeah, I'll take that. So there's GSA is the boss and the VA is the subcontractor. They have 9 categories, contract numbers that they work for doing, and they're all federal supply schedules. So everyone that has either a GSA or a VA has a federal supply schedule. One's not better than the other. It's who's has a responsibility for doing the contracting work with the suppliers.
Anything, Don, anybody else we good there? All right, perfect. All right, excellent. The next question is that we hear, and this kind of in the same vein as that, but we hear a lot about the GSA. How important is a GSA when selling to VAs? That actually came in the chat as well. Anybody want to jump on that?
I can take that one.
Good, Merl.
The VHA is another branch of the VA, if you will. It's kind of like Department of Defense. You have Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines. In the VA, we have similar departments. The VHA is kind of the big medical provider, if you will. They're the frontline doctors, and they have some of their own procurement rules. And within the VHA procurement manual and some of the policies, they prioritize buying off of strategic contracts. And multiple award schedule, like an FSS, is a preferred method of purchase. So they're always encouraged to go that way first, unless they have a good reason not to. So if we have vendors out there that are, have a high volume item that they think would be something beneficial to the VA that fits within our scope, then that's probably the way to go.
Excellent.
Provided it fits in one of those 9 categories.
Yes.
And so, again, I'm encouraging folks to give us your questions as well in the chat. There's a few in there, and to our panelists, to jury, everybody, if you see something in there, feel free to answer it. Either text it or type in there, or we can just talk about it here. This is something Dennis and I and Don have all talked about, and it came up actually in our pre-conference call here. There's a lot, this is coming from me mainly. There's so many acronyms as it relates to the federal government, and I don't know any of them, frankly. I know very few of them. And so there's an alphabet soup listing. Who in this group could potentially help us with that? And or Dennis, I think this is probably more directed to you. Maybe you could help us kind of do talk a little bit about that.
So just as for people that are participating, if they're working in the GPO world, there's acronyms for that. This is a different language with similar acronyms though. And we could send out the list of acronyms and abbreviations to everyone sometime next week if they wanted to.
Right. And I would add to that, it is mind numbing that it's a whole different language when you start selling to the government. And I mean, there are so many acronyms from VISNs, VACO, VAMCs, FedRAMP, the VR, the TRM, what's a CO? There's so much to learn. And it's really important that you learn that language and that you're able to speak it, recall it, and also include it in your procurement narratives when you're responding to an RFP. Another acronym.
Exactly.
Yeah, And there's one more thing. If the audience out there is familiar with the FAR, the Federal Acquisition Regulation, if you just go to part 2, it's called definitions. And it really doesn't talk a lot about acronyms, if you will, although there's some of those in there. But there's a lot of terms we use that are, government legal speak, if you will, that can be really confusing. Where in the, the commercial world, they mean something completely different, but in the government world, they're a term of art. So it's important to understand when we say something to you using a specific phrase with regard to contracting, we may be keeping it in that narrowly defined definition as laid out by FAR Part 2.
Very, very good. And obviously it's popped up here in chat. Dennis does have a list of acronyms that he's put together through the years. I think he wants to clean it up a little bit, and we'll get that out to everybody that's here and or who's registered. We'll get that probably first the next week sometime. I can't give you an exact date, but it'll be soon, and you'll have all that with you. So hopefully I think that'll be a really good take home for you guys. So I appreciate Dennis and Drew doing that. Also, good job, Drew. Drew's already answering some questions, so feel free to keep on popping them in there. All right, here's some other questions. More of these are kind of like, well, maybe the, VA 101, some of the first starting questions here, and then we're going to get into maybe some deeper questions. But I think we kind of discussed a little bit, the difference between the NAC, the National Acquisition Center, and the Strategic Acquisition Center. Anybody want to pop on that? We kind of touched on a little bit, but anybody want to talk about that, Merl?
Yeah, if anybody out there was at the Vets 23 conference, I think it was last week or week before down in Orlando, the acting director mentioned that those organizations are combining. So the daylight between the two is getting narrower and narrower. But if you look at the buying missions of each, they're very similar. Both have large national scope. The National Acquisition Center does federal supply schedule. That's what we're most famous for. Within the SAC, they're well known for MedSurg Prime Vendor, which again is another very large scope contract that is through prime vendor programs. And as time goes on, you'll see those blend, I believe, to kind of, we're going to become one organization, the NAC and the SAC. I think some of the suggestions, we rename it the SNAC, but I don't know how that's going over. So we'll see.
All right. I like it. All right. My good friend Will Grace popped something in there. I'm going to send this to you, Carl. What criteria is used for determining if the NAC will allow products on an FSS? How long does it take? Can you help us on that one?
So I think probably the biggest thing is, and Dennis brought this up earlier, does the product actually fit into one of the categories that the VA is responsible for? That's really the biggest determinant on whether or not the NAC will allow it or not. There's also a series of procurement tests that really need to be met as well. One of the most common is country of origin, right? So we want to make sure that the country of origin requirements that apply to all government procurements are met. It's going to be much more difficult to get the product on from China than what it will be to actually have one that's here performed in the United States or in a Trade Agreements Act compliant country, a TAA compliant country. So those are a couple of the things that the NAC is going to look for. They're going to do a price reasonableness test. They're going to do market research to figure out, hey, is this price in line with what the government should pay? And then, is this a responsible vendor, a responsible offerer? Can this company actually deliver? So there's a variety of things that they're going to look at, but those are some of the biggest.
Well said. Anybody want to add anything to that? We're good there.
That's good.
And it could be for services also.
Okay, good. All right, a couple more of the kind of the starter questions a little bit. And I think this is a decent question. How is agreement with the Veterans Administration different than a GPO agreement? And because again, is it hunting licenses? What is it exactly? Who wants to kind of jump on that.
I think you can characterize that as what's the difference between a commercial contract and a government contract, and you know, that kind of, in my mind, encapsulates it. The big difference that I always end up discussing with customers is the government has a lot of what we call unilateral rights that don't exist within commercial agreements. For instance, the changes clause. You know, we can make changes. Now, that doesn't say that you have to just suck that, you know, cost up, or that, you know, that work up. You know, you can come in for an equitable adjustment. But there's a lot of things in government contracting where the government can just direct the awardee to do things, and they kind of, you know, I don't want to say have to do it, but they have limited options when it comes to rejecting that work. And they agree to that going in, because those changes clauses, those unilateral kind of language requirements are in most government contracts, and either you accept them or you don't. Whereas in a UC, in a commercial agreement, you negotiate a lot of those things. You can say, we completely reject that entire premise, and we simply don't allow a lot of that.
Really, really well. Anybody want to add into that? We good there?
Over the years, I've always treated them equal, you know, like worked them same. However, with the government, with VA and DOD, when you're quoting that price, got to remember that tracking customer that you're doing, and you can't, you know, abuse that tracking customer, because the consequences are much more severe.
Yeah, that especially for FSS, that tracking customers is really a central tenet of what we do. And the other thing about federal contracting is we maintain a database that is called CPARS, PEPRS actually. It's, you know, got more acronyms, but we rate contractor performance, and it becomes a matter of record that other contracting officers will go in and look at for future acquisition to determine responsibility and things like that. So it really does matter. Whereas in commercial agreements, I'm not sure the same thing exists other than word of mouth.
Perfect. Anybody got anything to that? Again, I appreciate, Carl, I see you and Drew both answering some questions. So I appreciate you doing that, trying to get maximum value. And by the way, after all this is said and done, I'm going to give y'all some information about contact, but all these execs, maybe without Merl, but they're happy to help afterwards and maybe answer more questions about how this works. This is what these guys do for a living and have been forever. So they're more than happy to do that. And this, we had this as an early question, and it came in, and I see it right here. What is a tracking customer? How would you describe that? How would you define a tracking customer?
There's two terms you're going to see used a lot when you talk about FSS. One is most favored customer, and one's tracking customer. And essentially what it means is we're looking for pricing that is equal to or better than the customer group of customers that you give that best pricing to. At the onset of your agreement, there will be a negotiation where you establish a tracking customer. And that customer, a lot of times it is your most favored customer, but that customer is a vendor that buys the same things that you're selling to us, and you establish a relationship. And we can really go down a rabbit hole here, but essentially there's let's say a percentage difference between what you offer the government and what you sell to that tracking customer for, and that is your tracking customer. That relationship is locked in for the life of the contract. So if your pricing changes, we'll look at what they call upsetting that relationship. Does it upset that relationship? And in almost all circumstances, if it upsets that relationship, we will go in for either an adjustment or price change. You know, there are exceptions to everything, of course. And again, it's a complete, it's a 2-hour course just for this. So at a very high level, that's kind of the way it works.
Very, very good. Because again, that came in, I've seen that twice already. So Really well done. Here's a question that came up, and actually I got a text from a friend of mine who's a manufacturer, a US-based manufacturer, and his question was, how long must my company be in business before applying for the federal supply schedule? Anybody who wants, Carl or Drew?
I don't think there's a hard and fast requirement about how long a company has to be in business, but they do have to pass a responsibility test in order to be placed on schedule. And Merl, maybe you can talk a little bit more about that, but there's not like a requirement that you have to be in business for 5 years. They welcome new entrants to the marketplace, that's for certain.
Yeah, but yeah, a few years ago, the GSA and the VA had a requirement that you had to have like 2 years of receipts, but they removed that language. The GSA removed it, and of course, we go by their rules as well. And they removed that language. They've recently, the GSA has put that back in there, but we didn't in the VA. And going back to what Carl said, we simply make a determination of responsibility, which is kind of a more holistic view. We look at financials and a lot of that kind of information. And if you're found to be responsible, you kind of meet that threshold. And we don't really put a very strict time limit on it.
And I would add to that when responding to an RFP, it's important that you show attestation of past performance. Indicate what kind of past performance you have, both in the federal space, but also in the private space, because it helps substantiate that your offering has been tested, it has been used, it's valid, and that the government can trust it.
Very, very good. Very, very good. Hey, give me just, again, this is one of those questions that I can ask because I don't know any better. Obviously, if I go to Vizient, if I go to Premier, if I go to Health Trust, they would tell me that they manage $20 billion in sales, right? Or revenue. If I were to say that to you, to the VA, what type of spend do they have generally? Do we know? Merrill, he's laughing at me. So,
well, I mean, when you talk about sales just through our FSS, you can go out on places like fpds.gov, Federal Procurement Data Systems.gov. You can go on USA Spending, and it shows you the kind of money. The VA is, I believe, we're number 2 behind Department of Defense as far as federal bucks. And I think last year, if I heard correctly, just through our federal supply schedule sales, it was in the range of 16 billion or so. And that's just one office within the NAC. We've got a number of buying offices across the spectrum that buy a lot of stuff. But our most visible is the sales through FSS.
So it tells me that companies that are reticent to do it are missing a huge opportunity.
When I started,
absolutely.
When I started, it was roughly, if you were $100 million company, you should have been doing 5 million with the VA. Then it went to 6%, so that's 6 million. Now, when someone's asking, what should we be doing with the government, and that includes VA and DoD, we quote 8%, so that would be $8 million, and that number is moving north.
Yeah. And we're talking about numbers here and budget that is put together to spend. It's always important for you, if you feel you have a leading solution and it's unique in the market, it's very important that you research the government and find out what their needs are. Get in early and start having conversations about, with the frontline people that are having the pains. What do you need? What's impacting, like for the VA, what's impacting veteran experience? What's impacting the well-being of the patient? What's impacting cost? And see if you can begin to learn and position yourself early in the process according to the VA or the agency's priorities and the critical needs that are on the front line.
Dennis, go ahead.
I just, if Don's done, I'll seen a stat that we see a lot, and SAM is not a VA contract. SAM is just step 1 so that you can register. So if you have a SAM, you don't have a government contract. It's just to get you going to try to get a government contract.
Which,
And if I can add something on top of what Don said, meeting with vendors and they ask those kind of questions, what does the VA need? And, that's kind of the wrong way to approach, because you should have a capability and hopefully you've done your research. But just a tip, we always tell people, read the Annual Appropriations Act. They tell you what they're going to spend money on. And, that gives you a good idea of what the agency's priorities are, not just the VA, but anybody. But if you go through that annual appropriations bill and get down into the spending, you can see clearly where our priorities are. And, that's how a lot of companies get way out in front of it.
I agree, Merle. You've got to do a lot of work independent of calling anyone within the healthcare system, because number one, they're busy. Number two, it's not their area to take vendor calls. So you've got to be proactive. You've got to learn from other sources. And as Merle indicates, come with a solution.
good. Everybody, you might want to add anything to that? We still got some questions coming in. I'm still asking, I do have a script, if you will, but we're going to go off script the whole time, as you can tell. That's not I'm not much of a script follower. So if we can, and I got a direct message here. Let me see if I can find it. Where did it go? I've actually gotten quite a few and now I've lost it. All right, with that being said, let's just go back to the to one of the questions here. And this kind of goes to exactly what you were just talking about, Don. How do I register with the VA so I can receive RFPs once the sourcing opportunity is open? You might want to jump on that, Carl or Drew?
Can you repeat that?
Yeah, can you
for some
please
reason
repeat
that I missed that.
That's I speak
Sorry.
I speak Southern, so that might have been the problem.
It's like the GPO world. Once you register, you can get an RFP, but the government doesn't work that way. It's you go and source for the opportunity.
That's an important distinction. Go ahead, Merle.
Yeah, when you register for SAM, there are some notification options, and over on the right there's a little 3 dots, and you can sign up for usually what I advise most people to do is those NAICS codes that you've registered under. And if you went through the SAM registration process, you know what a NAICS code is. You go in there and you get daily notifications of opportunities that have been posted for your NAICS. And there may be one, there may be 1,000, depending on if you're in the IT space, there's a lot. But if you're more narrowly focused, it's manageable. But there are YouTube videos that I direct people to that are produced by the Small Business Administration that are excellent, tutorials, 3-minute videos that talk exactly the process, how to set up your notifications and alerts and all of those, things that you need to be notified of opportunities.
Right. In addition to that, you can work directly with the government as a prime contractor, but you can also look to position yourself with a prime contractor. And some companies do that. I've worked in the private sector where we were our own prime contractor, and that comes with some advantages and also some headaches. And there are other opportunities where you might align with a service disabled veteran-owned small business, that's SDVOSB, who is a prime contractor, and they take care of all of the, I would say, the contracting and procurement strategy portion, and then you are free just to bring your solution to them, a solution that's solving on the ground matters. So that's another way to sell to the government, is through a prime contractor.
Very good. I see some heads bobbing, so that's a good thing. I'm gonna Ben Davis. I know Ben put this out there as one of the very few USA nitrile exam glove manufacturers. We meet TAA requirements, but nearly all gloves purchased by the VA are with waivers. Would you recommend unsolicited proposals to speed up the procurement timeline? Pretty specific question, but anybody want to jump on that, Carl or Drew?
There was language in last year's appropriation bill, and you kind of caught me flat-footed here, but I had it, that mandates purchase of domestically produced nitrile gloves. So, that has changed the way the federal government procures those. As far as unsolicited proposal, that's, again, we talked in the beginning about, specific terms mean specific things. An unsolicited proposal in government speak means that you're giving us a proposal for something that doesn't exist for the government. It's new and innovative. So it wouldn't work as an unsolicited proposal. However, you do have opportunity at this point because of that legislation. And it would take me a little looking to tell you where that's at. But there is opportunity now for domestically produced nitrile gloves that didn't exist before.
I'd like to add a little bit to that too. The glove marketplace has been, at least in the VA, has been dominated by BOSMA. They are an Ability One company, meaning they employ blind individuals, and they source their gloves from outside the U.S. They're not U.S. made. That is one of the few ways that is kind of a way to circumvent the TAA requirements, is to go through an Ability One company, and that's essentially the way they've been doing it for years. It is it's a great cause. I've been in that facility and seen the folks that actually repackage and ship these gloves, and it gives an awful lot of disabled people meaningful jobs, supporting these government contracts. But as Merl said, that's going to change. The language is in there in the legislation, and we'll see how it plays out. But BOSMA has dominated that marketplace for a long time.
All right, anybody else on that? I want to throw that in there. One of the questions I got actually privately, actually as a text, was about, do I have to give, it relates to pricing. And actually, we had this in some of our earlier questions. Do I have to provide my best pricing to the government necessarily? How does that work?
Oh,
Yes.
I'll take a crack at it.
All right, let's go, Carl. You go first.
Go ahead, Carl.
So I think, and this is the standard contracting answer, right? Merl will probably nod his head at this, but it depends. Okay, so when you, especially when you're in a schedule environment, are you required to do your best pricing to the government? The short answer is yes. They want you to be tied to that tracking customer, and give the best possible price with all available discounts to the federal government. However, not all customers buy the same. So in terms of a schedule environment, does it mean that the government, who does not always give guarantees as to volume, do they have to be given the same price as you give a GPO customer that's guaranteeing that they're going to buy a certain percentage of items from you per year in a market, or a certain dollar value? No, those aren't really the same type of customers in a schedule environment. So Merl, if you want to talk a little bit more about that, but you in my mind, you really have to give the best price possible to a similarly situated customer. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that's true. And a lot of what we're talking about here is really kind of focused around the FSS environment. And, that's not the only way we buy stuff in the federal government. You've probably heard the term best value. And a lot of the procurements we do outside of federal supply schedules are based on a best value determination, which is, again, a holistic view of, price, schedule, performance, and what gives the best value to the government for price. And sometimes, past performance and price might be, or past performance may be more important than price for the government. So outside of the FSS world, we do that all the time. We have to justify that, and it's clearly laid out in the evaluation criteria, which you as a contractor know going in. So you can kind of provide that information or have that ammunition, if you will, going in to understand how it'll make you competitive relative to your competition.
Yeah, Earl just kind of asked a question there. If y'all saw that, he just asked it. When you say a schedule environment, does that equate to being on the FSS? Anybody want?
Yeah. What I'm meaning is federal supply schedule, no D on the end, schedule environment.
The easiest way is when you're disclosing your commercial customers, i.e. GPO customers, if you have them, you show your most favorite customer. So having lived in Cleveland for a long time, I'd always use Cleveland Clinic as like a big research area. And let's say they helped you market research your product and you gave them a 50% discount. And I'm just using this as an example. It's nothing, legal here that we're doing. But your normal tier 1 pricing for your GPOs was 20%. That's what you would show as your tracking customer, is that 20% for your tracking customer. You disclose your best deal and the government wants that, but you don't have to give that because there's reasons why you gave that 50% because they helped you bring that product to market or whatever reasons. But that tracking customer is what you have to really watch for. And as with the GPO at tier 1, there's not that commitment, which would be similar to a federal supply schedule with the government. And the only difference is if you're in capital and there's freight, and that freight cost is say 5%, well, your government price can be 5% higher, but you're going to give them freight. So it makes it equal.
There's some value right there. Everybody, I hope you heard all that. That was some good stuff. I'd heard you kind of talk about that before. That's some good stuff.
I know for Carl and Drew, there's a lot of MSPV questions out there.
Anybody want to hop on that? Or, I mean, here's one that Dan asked, and it's kind of in lines with all what we're talking about. How does the VA determine if they are getting the appropriate price? Does the supplier send in the tracking customer's price? Who wants that? Drew?
Yeah, so when we're looking at pricing, so the contracting officer, that's their job to do that homework and that research. So they're going to go out, look at the market. They're going to say, yep, here's our 2 competitors. We're also submitting several examples of orders when we apply for both the FSS on the DA side and a DLA type contract for DAP or ECAT. We're submitting several examples on the DLA side of actual POs and on the FSS side of examples of orders that are going to match that tracking customer and that MFC, that most favorable customer. And then that contracting officer that's reviewing all of this information that we submit, they're the ones that are going to determine, yes, we are receiving this price. And depending on that letter you write that's saying why the government doesn't deserve the MFC pricing, right? Because we're going to treat them like a capstone tier 1, let's say, right? Because the capstone customer is not committed to that full volume of spend. But by being able to access that pricing, we are going to give them a little bit of a discount, and this is where we're going to see. So that contracting officer is mainly responsible for doing a lot of that research.
I'd like to chime in too on that one, and that is, that's kind of the way the schedule world works. On other procurements, the contracting officer and the pricing specialist within the VA have kind of a wide range of data at their disposal. There's a product that's generated by actually the good folks at the Defense Logistics Agency called MedPDB, and that gives kind of on a part number basis what prices have been paid by DoD and VA for literally thousands upon thousands of items. So they have a pretty good idea of what the pricing history is on many of these purchases outside of the schedule world. And they do also purchase commercial pricing data as well. So they contracting officers can find out, hey, what is actually being charged in the commercial space for a product or service as well. So it's more of an art than a science, but contracting officers do have a lot of tools at their disposal to make that determination: is the price reasonable or not reasonable?
And Carl, there was an add-on question just then. How do you obtain that pricing data? That was a question from Rich.
How does the government obtain it?
Is that correct, Rich? Is that what you're asking?
How do we, as potential contractors, is that something that we have access to?
I don't think you would have access to the government product. I think for the commercial side, they use, I think it's called ECRI. And that is a subscription-based product that can give you some of that pricing information. If you can't, from the government perspective, if you can't find it on ECRI, or you don't have that prior purchase information, you're going out and trying to call people and trying to do that market research and find out, hey, what are people actually paying for this product? So you're scrambling to try to find that, and you have to do that for every single procurement out there. You have to do that market research.
Good question there, Rich. Corey, I see you popped in there. ECRI is here. Glad y'all are here. I just got another question for our panelists. If you feel comfortable doing it, please put in your email and your mobile or phone number in here, because some folks are asking for it all in real time. So if you could do that they could help them stay in touch with you afterwards. That would be great. And next, I'm going to pop in a quick little something. If I'm not connected with you on LinkedIn, send me a request. It's a lot easier for me to communicate with you via LinkedIn. It is me sending you direct emails. I'll send that to you here in a second. Any other thing? What else we have? Anybody else on this list here? Let's see what we got. Will Gray, did you get your question asked? Did Carl answer that question? I think you just did, didn't he? You guys are good, by the way. Y'all are answering a lot of good questions in real time. This is better than normal. All right, Don, thanks for putting in your information as well. Dennis, that's good. All right, what else we got? We got some questions here. The MSPV questions. Did we get those? Did we talk about that yet? I've heard small biz contractors complain about not receiving PVONS from the primes in an attempt to block their progress in selling product. See, that means nothing to me, unfortunately. Are there any strategies in getting PVONSs quickly? See, I don't know what I'm talking about. I hope y'all are okay with that.
Yeah,
Carl worked there.
I can talk to that a little bit. So PVONs, kind of the term of art, it's prime vendor, item number, order number, whatever the ON stands for. But it's the
you
number.
Don't even know, and you work there. Come on now.
It's the number that the Cardinal or Medline just-in-time provider, the distributor, actually puts on that item in order to enable the facilities to order it and have it shipped to that facility on a just-in-time basis for MSPV. Working on that program for a while, we've heard that on the government side. The best thing I can advise you to do if you think that's occurring is pick up the phone and call Katie Hulse. She is the director at the SAC of the Medical Surgical Prime Vendor Program. She handles all of the distribution contracts. She doesn't handle the BPAs for the suppliers, but she handles the contracts with Cardinal and Medline and the people that actually assign the PVONs. And that's really a no-no. I mean, if there is a demand signal from the facilities, those prime vendors are supposed to assign that PVON on a timely basis and do it very quickly. And it's a problem if they're not.
Okay, good question. Good answer there. Anybody want to add to that? I did get this question in from Lori, and it's interesting because how does the insurance plan work for VA and DOD? And at what point are veterans or active duty military and their families able to seek care outside of the system? Anybody have anything to offer on that? Carl or Merle, do you know?
Yeah, I can talk to it a little bit. I did do some work with the Care in the Community contracts, the CCN network. It is, I think it came in around 2013, 2014. Veterans were being given the ability to actually find medical care on the economy and then have the VA kind of pay for it, like TRICARE does. It's the same type of program. VA almost acts like a medical insurer, providing payment to providers that are seeing veterans for specific conditions. So as far as I'm aware, the veteran still has to go through their local VAMC medical center and request the ability to go outside to get that medical care. But they've made it far easier for the VAMC to say yes to that. Those providers are, of course, part of a network. There's a third-party administrator. One of them is called Tri-West Alliance. One is called Optum, that actually administer all of those payments and provide a provider network of medical professionals that do that. But that program is expanding. It is literally tens of billions of dollars in medical care per year that's provided out on the economy, and it is an incredibly complicated contract vehicle, to say the least. But that's how it works.
I'll add to that. Yes, the community care network concept has been in development for a couple of years, or a number of years actually. At the VA Healthcare Summit that we'll be hosting in July 18th and 19th in DC, we will be addressing the integrated veteran care matter as part of the agenda of that summit.
Don, is there like a URL or a website for that particular meeting or anything?
Yeah, if you go to the show producer site, idga.org, you'll find the VA Healthcare Summit, and you can refer to that. Maybe
you send that to me as well. I'll kind of include that, because actually I think you're chairing that, aren't you? Yes, sir. It's an incredible agenda. I looked at it a couple months about a month ago. So well done on that. All right, guys, we got about 6-7 minutes here left. Anybody want to throw something out here? I want to get as much as we possibly can and connect this community as best as I can in this amount of time. As someone said, they said, I love it, incredible information, but it's very confusing. And I'd have to, it's, if y'all do this every single day, to you guys, it's like, that's the way it is, but this is different.
It's incredibly confusing.
How about if we talk a little bit about DOD?
Yeah, go ahead, Dennis, fire away.
I've been talking a lot, throw it back to the panel as far as, what's with ECAT and DAPA, what do we do? What is it?
Sure. So I'll take a shot. So we talked about the MedSurg Prime Vendor Program for VA. DOD has a mirror image of that program, or maybe DOD started. I'm not sure which. But the DOD has and the way they populate the items that they do on that MedSurg program is somewhat different than the VA. The VA used a competitive BPA process where suppliers actually went out and competed to have items on that program. The DoD procedure utilizes a DAPA, which is a pricing agreement rather than a contract or a BPA, and they it's almost like it's almost like a schedule in terms of anyone can apply to be on that DAPA. To get on their medical surgical prime vendor program, and that's really where the DAPA comes in, and there's not a lot of terms and conditions. There is a pricing check for reasonableness, but but you can go on DAPA or off DAPA at specific times. They open it up, they close it. Most of the time it is open and available for companies to go on. And those kind of create the formulary for that DoD Medical Surgical Prime Vendor Program. ECAT is a little bit different. ECAT is just an electronic catalog. In different areas, there's a equipment ECAT, and there's a few other areas, but it almost acts like a schedule. It's out there at a set price, and the DoD activities that are interested in purchasing items from that ECAT can go out there with a minimum level of competition or hassle and purchase those ECAT items. So it's a little bit different philosophy, but it's really getting the same job done as the way that it's done in the VA.
You know what this is telling me? If you want to sell, you need to talk to somebody like you guys that does this every day. Because the regular company out there who's been selling to, acute care hospitals around the US for 10 years, this is a whole different animal, and they do need some guidance, it sounds like. So obviously, I appreciate all of you for participating today. The amount of questions we've got is incredible. I've gotten quite a few direct I ain't gotten to, but we are bumping up against our time, and I'm very, very aware of that it is Friday afternoon. And obviously, y'all are doing this just for being kind, if you will. And so we have to be aware of that. I'm more than happy to stick around and talk to anybody or help if I can. I'm sure if one or more of the panelists can, that's great too. But first, thank you for being here and for doing this. I hope this was helpful. Again, I thought our panelists did a great job trying to explain something that's rather complex, at least it is to me. But reach out to them. I'm sure they can help you figure this out. Got a bunch of things coming in, as y'all can see. That's good. I'll wrap this stuff up. We'll try to get this recording done. I'll get it out early next week sometime. Hopefully by that time we'll get Dennis and can get a little bit of information on the acronyms. Don will get me more of the information about the upcoming meeting that he's chairing. Anybody have anything else you want to add, send it to me. We'll just create a big document. We'll send all kinds of resources to everybody. Does that help? That makes sense? Anything, Carl, Drew, anybody want to add anything else there?
I would just like to say, I think the audience has seen that there's a mix of the art of selling to the government and then the complex requirements that must be met. And I think we covered that fairly well today. Good, well done. Drew, you got something? I thought you...
No, thanks for having us.
Okay, Carl, I appreciate it. You got anything, any final words for us there as we get ready to sign off?
No, it's just, I would just say that, it's a hassle to deal with government, but it can be very rewarding. And without our industry partners, you couldn't provide services to the veterans, and it's a noble cause. It really is.
I mean, that's what drives me, this whole concept of putting this together, frankly. I mean, our veterans need all this help, and we've got all these great services out there and great products, but they need to be funneled through the VA as well. So I appreciate you doing that. Dennis, you got anything to add?
Just thank Merle and Carl for their services.
Mm-hmm.
We really appreciate it. And that for everyone, if you're not in the VA, DoD business, public health, Indian affairs, you really should be, because there's a big opportunity. And for those that in capital equipment, between next July and September, that one quarter, the fourth quarter for the VA, they'll buy as much as they have for the whole year, the preceding 9 months, because the fiscal year is coming to an end. So you got to get out there and knock on the doors for capital equipment.
And Hayes, thanks for gathering this group today and this great people from the industry. You do a great job, getting leadership together, industry leads to talk about supply chain and other business disciplines. So thanks for doing that today.
I love it. I absolutely love doing this. And this is fun for me. And I feel like what I'm learning, and as I'm seeing some of these, we probably need to do something again around this, because I feel like there's a lot of complexity that could, we could probably work on. And so anyway, to anybody that's here, I appreciate it. It's 4 o'clock on the East Coast, Friday afternoon. Go have a beer, and I appreciate it more than you know. I'll be in touch soon, and thank everybody. I appreciate it.